Shirin Khosropour. I'm director of the Center for Peace and Conflict Studies, which is bringing you this wonderful series of peace and relationships. This is number 2 in this current series, and we're lucky enough to have had one earlier webinar session with DWAY-nah in the summertime, and you can find recordings of both of those past sessions if you're interested in watching those. A quick introduction to DWAY-nah, but first let me remind you of what we are asking you to do today and how you can communicate with DWAY-nah during the session. Please turn off your audio and video during the session to improve the streaming quality of the webinar. The webinar is being recorded, so keep that in mind when you're making comments. You can make your questions and comments in the chat box. You can make them to everyone if you want it to be visible to everyone, or if you'd like to make them privately to Duana for Duana to address, you can select send to Duana Welch, and she will create space during the session to address all of those questions, or as many as we can. So now a quick introduction to Dr. Duana Welch. She's author of the Love Factually books, and the books are using social science, the science of psychology, to apply to real life relationship issues. She's taught psychology for over 20 years at different universities around the country, actually, including Austin Community College for somewhere between 5 to 10 years. We're not sure exactly how many years. She has appeared, her work and her have appeared at NPR, PBS, Psychology Today, and numerous other outlets. Her books have been translated to many different languages and are used worldwide. And she relies on science rather than opinion to help men and women of any age, sexual, or gender orientations find and keep the right partner. And she has a client practice via Zoom and other technologies. So welcome, Duana, and we love having you with us.
Thank you so much, Shireen. It is really fun to be back. So this is my third time, right? The first time we talked, it was about healthy communication. And the second time was just a couple weeks ago when we talked about attachment style. And today we're talking about forgiveness. And so I didn't always know this information when I was teaching. I only learned it in the last few years that I was educating at the college and university level. And I found that when I would talk about this, this was the topic where students would send me letters afterwards saying that for the first time in X number of years, they actually felt peace. You know, when you're teaching, you don't know what other people are going through. You don't know what their struggles are necessarily or what impact you're having. You may never know, actually. But I do know that this was the topic where there was more outpouring of gratitude than for anything else I ever discussed. And I'm always trying to get podcasters, because I do a lot of podcasting as a guest. I'm always trying to get podcasters to talk with me about forgiveness, and they won't do it. They don't think it's a sexy topic, but you know, not everything in life is sexy. Some things just feel really, really calm and soothing and peaceful. And there's a lot to be said for that. So without further ado, we're going to get into the science of what forgiveness really is. If I can make myself go to the next screen, the next slide. Return, no. You know, last time, I don't know why it went so much smoother than this, but it just did. Okay. View. Okay, and that's what we'll do then. Okay, Everett Worthington, Dr. Worthington is, I want to start by saying he's an African-American, because I think we need to acknowledge when people of color have achieved exceptional things despite a society that attempts for them not to. So Everett Worthington is a Black man who has his PhD in psychology, and he is the foremost researcher on forgiveness research. He is a Christian. That's the perspective he comes from. But what you're going to find out today is that some of the things you may have been taught, regardless of your religion, may not actually be part of what is integral to forgiveness. And so he found out all these things about forgiveness, which you are going to learn today. And after he became a world-renowned expert on the topic, writing books about it, he's got anthologies and edited volumes where he's the editor on this topic scientifically. 2 men broke into his mother's house, his elderly mother's house, and they killed her. Yes, you will get a copy of the presentation, I think. I know ACC is going to make it available to you after this. So, you know, the great irony and sadness of Dr. Worthington's life was he then had to apply his own knowledge of forgiveness science to himself. He had to forgive the men who murdered his beloved mother. That may seem like an impossible ask. I don't know what you yourself are struggling with, but he did it, and he's written about it very movingly. One of the experiments I'd like to talk with you about just briefly to show you the power of forgiveness was called the Stanford Forgiveness Project by Thorson, Luskin, and Harris in 1998. This was an experiment. Basically, people were randomly assigned either to have a 9-hour forgiveness workshop in which they went through the steps that we're going to cover today, or they were assigned to a control group, which did not receive the intervention. And then there was a post-test to look at whether there were any benefits to the people who had learned what forgiveness was, what it wasn't, how to do it, and had actually gone through the steps. And there were tremendous benefits to the forgiver. For example, the people who had gone through the workshop, and keep in mind, it was just 9 hours long, just that brief exposure enhanced their self-reported happiness. Remember, they're being compared to people who didn't get the intervention. So it's not like you say, are you happier now than before? You look at their happiness levels, you compare it to people who were randomly assigned not to get the intervention, and therefore you have confidence that the intervention is what caused this. You get cause and effect with an experiment. You vary just one thing, and then you know that the outcome is due to what you did. So really, this caused enhanced happiness. It reduced the stress of people who had gone through the workshop. They felt less anger. They felt greater optimism about their lives, and their physical health improved. So I don't know anybody who really doesn't want these outcomes. All right, so betrayal. The things in your life that need forgiving are betrayals. For example, it's not really likely that you need to betray someone who may have cut you off in traffic this morning, or you need to forgive someone who cut you off in traffic this morning. And if you do, that is an anger management issue. So just be aware of that. Forgiveness refers to a betrayal. A betrayal is a mismatch between something that is deeply important to you and what this other person did. And I'm going to hold up a book jacket right now. If you want to learn more about betrayal in intimate relationships, I recommend Broken Trust by Tim Cole and Emily Duddleston. This is a really great book about if you're in an intimate relationship and your partner has betrayed you, coming back from that betrayal. It's got a step-by-step plan. It's based on attachment research. As you know, attachment style is really important. It's a foundation of how people interact. So betrayals, you may be thinking, well, if somebody cheated on you, that would be a betrayal. Well, obviously, but there are other betrayals too. It's a betrayal if you share a secret with someone and they tell other people, like something that's deeply important to you that you would not want other people knowing. It would be a betrayal if your partner led you to believe that they were devoted to you, but in fact, they were looking for a job in another state and hadn't told you about it. It would be a betrayal if your partner said that they were financially solvent, but they had hidden from you vast debts. So you're kind of getting the picture here that there are many, many ways to not go along with the spirit of trust in a relationship. And it could be an intimate relationship or it could be something else. So thinking about that, I want you to just take a moment and pick something you're going to be thinking about throughout our time together today. How have you been betrayed and by whom? What in your life has something done that is still painful to you from your past? It could be the recent past or it could be the ancient past. And if you think about it, I will bet that you know adults who are my age. I'm in my 50s. I will bet you know adults who are still struggling with pain from the past of decades ago because they don't know what forgiveness is or they don't know how to do it. Somebody has asked me, Sarah Lynn Brown has asked, was it a longitudinal study? No, a longitudinal study would require gathering data over time. This was just 9 hours, the study I talked to you about by Thorson and others. Okay, hopefully everybody now has something in mind about betrayal. Premise says, do I need to know who specifically in a group betrayed me? It will help for today's purposes if you know the person who betrayed you. So if you need to think of an example, like at work being demoted. So you can do the exercises today if you don't know who done you wrong, but it will help if you do know that person. And sadly, life usually gives us plenty of opportunities to be betrayed and therefore to be able to identify somebody who has done it. And I've tried the up down arrows. Thank you for the person who suggested that. It worked last time I presented, but today it's not working. So I'm just going to keep doing this. Okay. All right. One of the things I found when I first started presenting forgiveness science was that many people were very hesitant to engage even with the topic of forgiveness. I had to learn myself why it was that people were resistant to this. I had to start asking questions in my classroom. And what I found was that most of my students didn't know what forgiveness was. They had a knowledge gap about what forgiveness isn't and also what it actually is. A lot of them had religious instruction that taught them things that forgiveness actually doesn't entail, that actually makes the concept of forgiveness very convenient for the person who has done you wrong and would not really be helpful to you. So I'm going to be presenting some things that are probably not part of your religious tradition if you have one. Also, people didn't really know how to forgive. Their steps. It's one thing for me to tell you what forgiveness is, what it isn't, and then saying forgive, but it would be like going to a therapist and saying, here's why I'm depressed. And they would say, oh, well, don't be. It's not terribly helpful, right? So what I'd like to start with, somebody's asked me a question. Mary D has said, what do you teach that you talk about is forgiveness. So I want us to do an exercise right now. And I want you to think about, again, whoever it is you're choosing to think about who has, I refer to them as the offender or the perpetrator because they've done something that is a grave offense. It's something that maybe made you feel worse about yourself, maybe made you doubt yourself, maybe has undermined your self-esteem, not just when they did it, but still today. Maybe it's something that's made you feel like the walking wounded and you feel like you'll never get over it. We're talking about something big here. And maybe it's something about the way you were raised that has made you doubt or not trust in people that you might partner up with. There are many, many things that people might have to forgive. What I want you to think about right now is what has kept you from forgiving this person so far? Just want to give you a minute to think about that. And then we're going to go over some of the things that students have told me over the years. Mary D says, are there different layers or stages to forgiveness? There are specific actions, which we'll go over about forgiveness. And then it's iterative, meaning that most people aren't one and done. Most people go through the exercise repeatedly. But once you know what the exercise is, you just repeat it at will as often as you need to. Okay, so in my experience, most students resist forgiving because they don't understand what forgiveness isn't. For example, I've had students say things like, if I forgave them, that would mean saying, no big deal. It's not important. What you did doesn't matter. It didn't really hurt me. You don't have to say any of that in order to forgive someone. You don't have to say it to yourself. You don't have to say it to them. You don't have to say it to anyone. The examples I've been giving you are serious examples. I have talked to people who were trying to forgive their mother for allowing a sexual perpetrator into the house who then repeatedly violated them over a period of years. We're talking about big stuff. There is no way I'm going to ever ask you to dismiss your pain or the validity of your experience. You lived what you lived and you know what you know, and nobody can take that from you. Nobody should even try to take that from you. So forgiveness is not dismissive of your fear, your pain, your needs, your experience. It's not dismissive of any of that. It's not telling anybody else, oh, no big deal. You know what? I'm over it. It's not any of that. Another reason that students over the years gave me for not forgiving, and this one really makes a lot of sense. They've been taught that you have to turn the other cheek. And, there's some religions that say you have to turn the other cheek like 70 times, 7 times. In other words, just about forever. And therefore, what they believe is if I forgive you, I have just given you permission to come back and do it again. Forgiveness is not about keeping you vulnerable to this other person. When somebody, I'm going to quote Maya Angelou, America's former poet laureate here. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. If they show you that they can't be trusted with your vulnerability, with your tender places, with your pain and fear of the past, with your body, whatever it is that they showed you, they don't have a right back into your life. There's no squatter's rights here. Forgiveness is not reopening the door and saying, come back in. In other words, forgiveness is not about lacking boundaries or what I call dormititis instead of dormititis. You're not a doormat, and you're not required to be in order to forgive, because that's not what forgiveness is. In fact, today we're going to spend considerable time talking about how to construct healthy boundaries so that you don't have fresh opportunities to forgive the very same person for the very same thing. Okay. Forgiveness is not, it's also not admitting that the perpetrator deserves forgiveness. There are things that are unforgivable in the sense that if we required people to say, no big deal, the perpetrator deserves our grace, they deserve our compassion, they deserve our kindness. There are things that we could never forgive if we were required to say that the perpetrator deserves that grace. I am going to readily admit to you that many, many offenders do not deserve your forgiveness. But fortunately, you don't have to believe that they deserve it in order to reap the benefits of forgiveness for yourself. I've got a question from Sadaf, who says, sometimes resolving our grief related to the incident will bring forgiveness. So working on our grief can be related to forgiveness. Yeah, Sadaf, it can be related to forgiveness, but there is really specific work aside from grief work that people do when they are going to forgive. There's really a pretty straightforward pathway to doing that. And grief work is a separate but related phenomenon. So I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, so let's talk about then finally, what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is actually really very simple. It's not easy to do, but it's very, very simple. All it is, 100% of what it is is letting go of your anger and your desire for revenge. Some people only have anger. Many people have vengefulness associated with that anger. It's letting go of both and or either or. That's all it is. It will lighten your load. You will feel a weight lifted from you. I've had letters from students who, after we talked about this in class, wrote to me and said, for the first time since I was a little child, I feel light and peaceful and happy. Anger is corrosive. Chronic anger is corrosive. As I showed you in the experiment that we started this lecture with, when people learn to forgive, they feel happier. That's because their anger is not corroding their insides anymore. They get physically healthier. Chronic anger is bad for your emotional health. It is bad for your physical health. They also are able to have better relationships because corrosive anger closes you off to being vulnerable. I had an experience just this last week where I had wondered if I allow myself to be vulnerable with somebody again and I get disappointed, am I going to be able to be vulnerable again after that? Is it going to close me down? No, because I've learned how to do this. And I've been really happy to learn in my own life that I am now able to say, that was that situation. It doesn't have to touch the core of who I am and how I feel about myself and whether I carry around chronic anger. Sarah Lynn says, what if the blame is displaced back onto the self as shame? So shame and guilt are two different things. You didn't ask the question, but I want to take it back to that. And thank you for giving me this opportunity. Guilt is actually a helpful emotion. Guilt can tell us that we've done something wrong, and therefore it can tell us, if we sit with that and examine it, it can tell us, oh, I didn't treat this person right. It might be a good idea to apologize to them for what I've done, or to live differently going forward. Shame is a feeling that we are wrong, that something about us is deeply broken, and that the foundation of who we are is blameworthy. Our integrity is on the line. So a lot of times people who have been emotionally abused or physically abused do feel that they feel a sense of shame, and healing from shame, forgiveness will help with that. Also being aware that you're having a shame thought instead of a guilt thought. If you feel shame, ask yourself, well, I mean, did I do something wrong? Because most people who feel shame did not do anything wrong. If you feel guilt, that tells you that something you did was wrong and it needs reparation. Susan says, is it bad for physical health and mental wellness? Absolutely. Shame and lack of forgiveness, both chronic anger, are very bad for your physical health and mental wellness. And experiments show that forgiving increases physical health and mental wellness, both of those. Okay, so there's an old saying. So many people have said this, and it's been attributed to so many different sources that I'm not going to attribute it to anyone anymore. Failing to forgive is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. You don't forgive because they deserve it. It's not about them. We're going to see later today, you don't even have to tell them that you forgive them. Silent forgiveness is a thing. You can forgive people who are dead. I've known people who were tortured by their grandparents, and their grandparents are dead, and they've forgiven them posthumously. You don't forgive because the perpetrator deserves it. You forgive because you do. You deserve to have a happy life. Forgiving is not about them and their well-being. And this is where a lot of religion, frankly, gets it wrong from a science perspective. I'm a person of faith, but to the extent that religion tells any of us that forgiveness is a kindness we do to somebody else, they're wrong. Forgiveness is about you. It's about your well-being. It's about what you need in order to be happy and live a peaceful life. And you know what happens when you're happy and live a peaceful life? You treat people better, and your own relationships go better, and you have a better life, not just now, but going forward. Think about what it does to the people close to you when you're carrying around stones in your heart. Think about how you act when you're upset. Do you get triggered? Do you treat them badly? If you do the work of forgiveness, you're going to treat other people better. Your legacy in this world will be a more, I would say, spiritually correct legacy of being kind and respectful to other people as well as to yourself. Sarah says, what I mean is, how do we stop the shame spiral if we're wired to redirect it back to ourselves, i.e. drinking to poison on their behalf? I really, truly recommend therapy. I mean, that's not going to be a quick, easy answer right there. We're going to talk about forgiveness work today, but if you find that you're trapped in an inescapable shame spiral and you're not able to notice when you're feeling shame and to redirect, to ask yourself, did I actually do something that's shameful? And to help yourself let go of that. If you can't take those steps, notice, redirect, repeat, then really and truly, I mean, I'm a big proponent of therapy, and therapy can really help with that. Therapy is kind of retro parenting, and a lot of us didn't get what we needed from our parents, and a good therapist can help that. So I'm gonna move on to the next. Mary D has asked a question of Sarah about feeling guilty, whether she did something wrong and whether that led her to feel that she was bad, wrong, less than, etc. A shame spiral. And that's a good thing to think about. But I think that you'll find that as we do the forgiveness work today, that should help point out some of the answer to that question. Okay. But I'm thinking maybe I should do a special lecture on shame at some point. Okay. This is an overview of where we're going for the rest of today. How to forgive. There are 3 basic steps. The number 1 step, we're not going to be covering again. We're just going to cover it right now, which is feel your feelings. I tried to start today's presentation with Not Ready to Make Nice by the Dixie Chicks. That song, if you've ever heard it, is about their experience of being attacked by their fans for saying something bad about the current president years and years ago when George W. Bush was president, and their fans turned on them and they got death threats and some things like that. And they wrote a song that said, I'm not ready to make nice. I'm not ready to back down. I'm mad as hell, and I don't feel right to go round and round and round. You know, and then they say, I wouldn't even change what I did if I could. They're really mad in that song. It is okay to be really, really mad when it first happens. In fact, if you forgive at that point, it's premature. It's just denial with a prettier label. Not everything takes 18 months to forgive. I have that figure on the PowerPoint for a really specific reason. And that is, a lot of times the hardest things to forgive are patterns that happened in relationships. Let's say you were with someone who was critical and judgmental and used your vulnerabilities against you over the period of a long marriage. Research shows that in the case of divorce, most people take 18 months before the mention of their former spouse fails to trigger them. 18 months, a year and a half before the mere mention of their name fails to trigger them. Because people tend to take marriage seriously and they tend not to exit it lightly. And so they exit it only after they've experienced a lot of pain. So if you've gone through something like that, the first 18 months are free. Just feel what you feel. Don't worry about forgiving them. You're processing. After that, however, if you're still hanging on to it and it's been a year and a half to 2 years, at that point, really, it's time to do the work that we're talking about today. It's time to work on forgiving this other person. So step 2 is get ready to empathize with their perspective. And getting ready to empathize, we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But again, that's not going to mean, and this is where a lot of my students would be like, whoa, 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 whoa. You just told me that I didn't have to say no big deal. You just told me that I didn't have to say that they deserve my forgiveness. Yes, I did just say those things, and I still mean them. Empathizing is not the same thing as that. We will be talking about that more. Let me see. I've got some more comments here. Sometimes in order to forgive, I ask myself to think as if the person has died and I'm praying for the peaceful life after death. It helps. Okay, that set off, dead people are easy to forgive and dead people are easy to love. So that makes a lot of sense. And the reason dead people are easy to forgive and easy to love is they can't come back and do it to you again. So if that's a technique that helps you, great. You don't have, see, the thing is with dead people, you don't have to set boundaries. So it makes it easier to forgive because you don't have to worry about them coming back and doing it again. Sarah Lynn says, it's magical thinking, I think is the word. The child can't imagine the caregiver as actually unsafe, so they blame themselves for the unsafe behavior. Yes, they do. Unfortunately, we are, we're fortunately not technically children, but of course, emotionally, all of us have sore spots, tender places from our upbringing that need healing for sure. What about forgiving someone? Letitia says, what about forgiving someone with a mental disorder such as bipolar borderline personality disorder? These types of people are most likely to be repeat offenders, but their family, what do you do? Letitia, that's a really great question. And we're going to come back to that. And if I don't come back to it, please, will you remind me when we talk about boundaries? Forgiveness is not being a doormat. It's not allowing the person to do it again. You're going to have to set boundaries. People who have borderline personality disorder are definitely going to do it again. It's not even a question. It's not like high recidivism here. It's definitive recidivism. They can't help themselves. So yes, you're going to have boundaries there. And we're going to talk really specifically about how to do that. Okay, so the third step, put it into words. There are 3 ways you can put this into words. You're not going to share these words with this other person. I want to make that clear. You're going to put it in words by doing the following exercise. We haven't got to the exercise yet, but you're going to do it with an empty chair. This is something that Dr. Worthington has done in his practice and in his experiments on forgiveness. He has people talk to an empty chair the way I'm going to teach you here in a minute to talk about this issue. Or you write a letter that you don't send. And I want to emphasize, you do not send this letter. Remember, we're not reopening you to the offenses of the past. There are many, many, many people it is not safe to tell that you have forgiven them. They will think you just rolled out the welcome abuser mat if you send it to them. Do not do it. Okay. Or you can write in a journal. I'm a big fan of journaling. A lot of what happens with emotions that are unexpressed is they just keep rattling around in here, right? They just keep running around in your head and in your heart. And there's research now showing that, when you say you have a gut feeling, you feel bad in your gut, you feel an intuition, you feel it in your gut. Well, we now know that there actually is a connection between the biology of your gut and your brain and things you feel in your heart. So it's not just a figure of speech, it's real, and it helps you to get those words out in a journal. But what words are those? Okay, we're going to do several different aspects of how you put into words. First of all, you need to name the harm that was done to you extensively. Say why you are in pain. Specify exactly what you're in pain about. List the episodes that hurt you. Name the impact. Include the impact to your feelings. I am quite public about, you probably know, and a lot of this information about forgiveness is in my second full-length book, which is, this is a not for resale copy, so it's got a band across the front, but the regular copies don't have that. Love Factually for single parents and those dating them. This is actually for everyone. There's some stuff for single parents. Almost everything in it is really for everyone. And forgiveness work is in this book because, unlike with my first book, which is much lighter, I'm assuming, based on data, that people who have gone through divorce and are single parenting have a lot to forgive. So where can you find my book? Susanna, you can find my books. You can ask any bookstore and they'll get my books. But if you want to get it, you can get it on audio or you can get it. Yeah, so they're all out in audiobook. They're out in ebook and they're out in paperback, and you can get them at Amazon in those formats. or you can ask. I know that Book People in Austin has it. Yeah, somebody says we love to order from Book People. Definitely you can get it there. I know they have copies of Book People. And if they've sold out, they'll just get you another one. Okay, so I went through divorce and I talk about it quite a bit, not in great detail, but I definitely reveal some things in my book because I'm asking other people to be vulnerable. And so I have to be a little bit vulnerable myself. And so in my case, doing the forgiveness work involved listing episodes that hurt me, such as I thought that we would love each other till we died. I've never found anyone before or since that I love the way that I love you. And when you became addicted or remained addicted to drugs and alcohol and could not or would not see it, and could not or would not puncture your denial, and could not or would not take care of me and our only child, it was devastating to me. I actually felt like life wasn't worth living anymore for a while. And it made me wonder if I could ever find love again, or if I would ever reach a point where I could be open. Okay, these are strong statements. This is the kind of thing that I am talking about. I am talking about laying it out there, putting your heart completely on the line. Remember, you're not going to show them. I'm so far past that divorce, by the way, that even though I can feel the feelings right now as I say this, I'm able to tell anybody about this. And I'm not worried that my ex is going to come and, do something horrible to me. He's a good person with a bad problem. I would not encourage you to be public about this. Again, I want you to be very, very private about it. I'm just giving you an example from my own life instead of somebody else's, so that you will see that, my life hasn't been perfect and I have to do the things that I teach other people to do. They're hard, but I try to do them. Okay, so after you put it into words by naming the harm, that's not the only thing that you do. Somebody says, Susanna says, it took me more than 10 years to forgive my ex-husband. Mm-hmm. Yep. I've met many people who said it took them more than 10 years. And, I'm hoping that this lecture makes it where people can do it at 18 months, because that's a lot of years to carry chronic anger around. And yeah, it's really, really hard to live with that anger. I want to set people free from that. So back to that empathy idea. You're going to have to see the events that hurt you through the eyes of the perpetrator. You will not forgive without empathy. I put it in bold and I italicized it. There is no forgiveness without empathy. You have to see it through their eyes. Okay, I want to emphasize, I've already said, you don't have to tell me forgive them. A lot of people are not safe to tell. Do not tell them. You also don't have to be right about their motives. Your empathy is not about whether you're correct about their motives. It's not about whether, if this was a court of law, you would be right. Your empathy is about finding out that their actions were about them. So, for example, if I were going to, and I did, and I still definitely empathize with my former husband, he was doing the very, very best that he could. That doesn't mean that it was appropriate. It doesn't mean it was safe. It doesn't mean it was good enough for me or our child. But it was the best that he could do. From his perspective, and that's what this is. You have to write down or tell that empty chair or journal about this. Write it in a letter. You have to in some way process what this looked like to them. So I'm going to do that now. I think that probably what you were going through was terror. When you were a little boy, your parents put you on barbiturates because the doctor thought that you had a disorder that required them. And then the doctor changed his mind when you were 15 and took you off cold turkey. And what else was going to happen to your brain? It was probably terrifying to you to realize that you were using, eventually you would get caught. I probably would not take that well, and that you could lose. You loved me more than anything or anyone. and you were going to lose me. And so, of course, you tried to hide things. Of course, you wanted to deny it because you couldn't live without the stuff and you felt like you couldn't live without me. Okay, now as I say this, and I think, when you take a moment to do this, what you find out when you empathize, you don't find out that this person should be allowed to treat you this way at all. That's not what empathy is about. You don't find out that what they did to you was no big deal. It was a big deal. You don't find out that you should live in this boundaryless way and just let them have access to you freely in whatever method they want, treat you however they want to. You don't find any of that out. What you find out, and this is what sets you free, folks, what you find out is that what they did was about them. It wasn't about you. I've had people who did this exercise with me who found this out about a rapist. Doesn't mean that the rapist doesn't deserve jail time. Doesn't mean that the rapist was right to do what they did. I've had people who found this out about child molesters, pedophiles. I've had people find this out about bosses. I've had people find this out about best friends who blab to the world about something that nobody else should ever have known about. I've had people find this out about their parents who did not protect them from perpetrators. When you find out, when you empathize, you will find out almost certainly that what they did was about them and not about you. What other people do is about them. When you forgive, it's about you. It's not about them. And Susanna shares with the group, I did tell him I forgave him, and then I felt released, happier, and I enjoy my life as a single mom. That's wonderful. I'm sorry that you had a decade before that happened. I really am hoping this information helps lots of people to have it happen so much more quickly than that, because you deserved, okay, for a year and a half, you weren't going to be able to forgive probably, but you deserved 8.5 years where you had that lightness, that happiness. Dow says, so does the forgiveness we address here involve reconciliation, a restored relationship? Nope, certainly doesn't. Did I go back to my ex? No, I did not. Knowing why somebody did what they did is very, very different than welcoming them back into your life or continuing the same type of relationship with them. It's very different from that. And it's, in fact, a big reason why people don't forgive is they feel like if they make themselves vulnerable by seeing the events through the perpetrator's eyes, that they have to drop their guard. No, do not drop your guard. What I said from Maya Angelou earlier, remind yourself, when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Believing them the first time means protect yourself. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to do this. There we go. Oh, yay, now my arrow keys are working. Who knew that's all I had to do? Okay. This is the last step of putting it into words, and Dow, your comment has led us directly there. Now that you've put into words, either with an empty chair, your journal, or a letter that you will never send, again, never send the letter. If you can't control yourself, don't write the letter. Do the empty chair. You've got to add your boundaries. So at this point, I've said, here's the harm. Here's exactly, specifically the things that happened that you did. And here's how I felt about it. Here's how it impacted my life. Here's how it impacted the lives of people I care about, even. Because as a mother, if you affect my child's life, you have affected me. Okay, that's number one. Number two, I then needed to see it through this person's eyes. Not so that I could excuse or condone or tolerate that behavior again. I should not do any of those things. But so that I could see that that was all about the other person. It was not about me. Once you realize this was not actually a personal attack, no matter how personal it felt, it wasn't. You're now ready to add your boundaries. Forgiving does not mean forgetting. A wise person forgives, a fool forgets. Never, ever forget. Or as I like to say, turn the other cheek, but you only got 4. So why is that? Because of the law of psychology. How many of you know the single biggest predictor of future behavior? Anybody here know what that is? Yep, there were several people who knew it. Good for you, S. McWilliams, Dow, and Mary. Absolutely, past behavior, but not just past behavior. The whole thing goes like this. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior in similar circumstances. Okay? Past behavior in similar circumstances. That's the law of the most basic. Psychology does have quite a few laws, especially when you get to like psychophysics. But the big law of psychology is this one, which means that when people say, if only I could have known, I think if you go back over relationships you've had, you will see that you could have known, except that you didn't know the law of psychology, or you didn't act as if you knew it. Acting as if you know the law of psychology means, oh, wow, I've got a crystal ball. And that crystal ball is relevant past behavior. If the behavior is relevant to what I'm going through right now, the odds are very high they will do it again, whatever it is. So, Mary D says, but if that's true, doesn't it mean no one ever does anything new or different? Nope, it does not mean that. The psychology is about odds. It is not about certainties. I'm going to give you a quick example. We're going to use the most common form of broken trust between couples that makes the news. Actually, the most common form of broken trust is being unkind and disrespectful. And we're going to talk about that in detail in a minute, but I'm going to start with affairs. I had somebody write to me saying that she was dating someone who revealed fairly soon in the relationship that he had, when he was married, he had an affair with his best friend's wife. He had never confessed, and he had then gone on to have another affair while he was married, though with somebody different. And she wanted to know, did I think he would do it again? So let's talk about who will do it again and who won't. People who do it again are people who did this very soon in a relationship, very frequently in a relationship, did it without remorse. By remorse, I don't just mean, oh, I'm sorry. I mean, independent of how you felt about it, they felt terrible about themselves and about their behavior. And they now have a long history of having lived differently. And by differently, I mean correctly, better, morally, with integrity going forward. They stopped doing whatever the thing was, and they stopped for a long time. That person is safe. They're doing something new and different. But I don't want you to trust him right away. Like if he had the affair with his best friend's wife last week, you need 5 years. I mean, you need a nice long time frame of him doing the right thing before you trust that person. Okay. So I think that person who wrote to me, if she hadn't been in relationship with him, she would have known the answer. But it's so easy, especially when we're falling for somebody, to get caught up in hoping that they will be different, hoping, I just don't want you to live with hope that is completely unfounded in reality. The people who do it again, I've already described. The people who don't do it again, I've described as well. This person who has betrayed you, usually when people are forgiving, they're not forgiving a single episode, are they? Think back, think about what you're thinking about right now. Is it really a single episode, or is this something where the person did the same thing to you again and again and again? I'm going to bet for most of you, the person did the same thing again and again and again. You kept hoping it would change. You talked to them about it. You asked them to do it differently. You asked them to do it better. You told them what you needed. And they kept doing this. Nothing you tried worked, right? Okay. So how do you identify your boundaries? I want to start by naming a boundary that everyone should have Absolutely everyone should have. It's really unusual for me to have any public appearance, any lecture, any webinar, any podcast where I do not say the following words. So here we go. I'm going to say them now too. If I had to summarize 60 years of excellent relationship science in just one sentence, here's the sentence. If you can find and be someone kind and respectful, your relationships will probably go well. And if you can't, they won't. Absolutely. If you cannot find and be someone kind and respectful, your relationships are going to go terribly. Maybe they go terribly right away, and maybe they go terribly 10 years down the road and corrode the whole 10 years, but they go terribly. One of the boundaries you all need to have from this moment forward is the first moment someone shows you a lack of kindness and respect, you need to be done. Yes, when I say, do I mean find someone kind and respectful as in the other person? Yes. You need to find someone kind and respectful. You need to be someone kind and respectful. These are the boundaries. If you are not yourself, and I don't want to present this as a personality trait because it's not. I was having a talk with Layla and Dr. Khosropour before we got on this call today about kindness and respectfulness and an example from my own life, which I'm not going to go into today. But they expressed, wow, how did you do that? Well, because this isn't something that I was born knowing to do. This is something that after I learned about relationship science, I began developing within myself. It's like Dr. Carol Dweck's work on on a growth mindset. You can grow this. So I want to tell you a little bit about what kindness and respect look like. Kindness and respect mean that you treat this other person with inherent worth and dignity, upholding the basic worthiness of their character and their personhood, no matter what happens. No matter if you're mad, no matter if you're sad, no matter if you had a bad day, no matter if you got fired, no matter if you had a bad year, no matter if it's 2020, because everything about 2020, as far as I can tell, has not been great. No matter. Layla says, I thought I would reshare Letitia. Oh, thank you, Layla. Letitia's question from earlier, now that we're talking about boundaries, what about forgiving someone with a mental disorder such as BPD? We're going to get to that in just a sec. Okay. Because so much, including with borderline personality disorder, what's a hallmark of that disorder? People get really mean, right? They find your sore point and they go, that's part of people with borderline personality disorder are terrified about being abandoned. And while you can have tremendous compassion for that terror and for the attachment wounds that they experienced as little children, which is considered a big part of where borderline personality disorder comes from, even though you can know that and have lots of compassion for it, that is different than saying, okay, I understand why you get really, really mean. I understand why the thing I told you in complete confidence, you used it against me and you made me feel lower than a worm's belly over that thing that I shared with you. I understand where that came from, so I'm going to let you do it again. No, I understand where that came from, and now I'm setting a boundary. Do not ask yourself if this is a bad enough reason to leave a relationship, any relationship, with your parents, sometimes with your children if they're grown, with lovers, with friends. Never ask yourself if this is bad enough to leave. Your question needs to be, is it good enough to stay? And I'm going to tell you right now, if they cannot be trusted to be kind and respectful, even if they had a bad day, even if you said something you shouldn't, then they can't be trusted and you have to have boundaries. So how do you enforce them? Okay. You need to get really clear with you about what behaviors they engage in that hurt you, that make you feel less than. And I love this book. I love the book Broken Trust. And one of the things I love about this book, in fact, I'm the person who is on the back cover. I wrote the endorsement for this book. I love it so much. One of the things that I really love about this book is that he's got a whole chapter. Dr. Cole has a whole chapter on, do you even want to get past the betrayal? And one of the big things is, if you're with someone who cannot or will not commit to to repairing this and changing going forward, living differently going forward. If they lack the skills or the ability, and with borderline personality disorder, they lack the skills and ability. If someone's been treating you horribly and they're not in dialectical behavioral therapy, or DBT, which is the therapy that helps people with borderline personality disorder to get well, then you're going to experience more of the same. You're not going to be treated with kindness and respect. You're going to be treated as the whipping boy or girl anytime they are triggered, and they get triggered a lot. So you're going to have to pick some boundaries, and you have to decide on the distance you need and the closeness that is safe. I want you to have safe relationships. Love is not enough. Safety is paramount. So what distance do you need? Well, sometimes you need a complete break. You just can't. And sometimes that's because somebody did something that, maybe you weren't that close to them yet, and they show you that they can't be trusted with your heart, and it's early in dating. Folks, believe it the first time, don't see them anymore, really and truly. In my book, Love Factually for Single Parents and Those Dating Them, I talk about an informal survey I did where I asked people in anticipation of this book, and again, this isn't representative, it's not science. It was an informal survey that I did where I asked people, in past relationships, what are the behaviors that you overlooked that you wish you did not overlook? What things did you let slide that you wish you had not tolerated? And I'm just going to tell you right now, every answer I got, without exception, mapped back onto a lack of kindness and respect. And they all said they wished that they had seen it the first time. They wish they had Maya Angelou the heck out of that and believed them the first time, instead of thinking, oh, well, don't make excuses, folks. Don't make excuses. It does not matter why they were unkind and disrespectful. You have to have a boundary to protect you. Here's some of the answers I got. I never thought to look for a man who would be kind to others so long as he was kind to me. The men who were only kind to me and not others in the beginning were unkind to me eventually. Then she goes on to talk about how she got a different standard and found somebody really great and is now married to that person. Another person says, it seems so obvious now. Do not overlook disrespect ever. If they're casually disrespectful of people, especially a parent, they'll certainly be disrespectful of you. In fact, the worst way they treat other people is how they will eventually treat you. By the way, science is 100% behind that. Look at how they talk about their ex. Look at how they talk about people who've disappointed them. We can all be nice when it's going well. It's when it's going badly that character emerges. Never think that their love for you would prevent them from doing what they do to others to you. A man wrote to me, I would bolt at the first sign of meanness. Absolutely. And that's not even all the quotes that I have in my book. It's certainly not all the ones that I have from that survey. So Mary D says, I'm a little confused. Can I trust them going forward rather than is this bad enough to leave? If the answer is no, is that because you haven't had enough time for forgiveness, because they're actually likely to repeat the behavior? Okay, so forgiveness is separate from letting them into your life. I want to make that really clear. You have to have boundaries so that it's safe to forgive. But when you're in a relationship, the question is this good enough to stay? Not, is this bad enough to leave? That's an independent thing. You don't have to forgive them before you figure out that this is too bad to stay. I had an experience this last week with someone who I thought we were going to have a conversation about something that had made me feel insecure and which I needed to be soothed about. And what happened was first a conversation that started with, you know what the first red flag was about you? That's so disrespectful and unkind. That's completely unacceptable. The moment that emerged from this person's mouth, I was like, oh, done. I sent a letter the next day. My letter was kind and respectful. And what I got back was a barrage of an attempt to tear down, not things I said, not things I did, my personhood. Okay. Do I need to continue examining that? No. Do I need to forgive it? Yes, because I deserve the forgiveness, because I deserve to be happy. Folks, I'm a person in the world. I'm not just somebody who knows about relationship science. I have to do the things that I'm asking you to do. I know this is hard. I know it's hard when you see a shiny object to say, oh, I know that it just saw something that I don't want to see. I'm going to just overlook. Do not overlook it. So you have to decide on the distance you need. Now, with somebody you're just getting to know, if they show you unkindness and disrespect, that distance is probably 100%. Letitia, with somebody with borderline personality disorder who's a family member, maybe it's your mom or maybe it's your brother. You may still have to have some level of closeness. Although I've got to say, I know a lot of people who eventually reached the conclusion that they couldn't have any relationship at all. This is about knowing what you need to do to stay emotionally safe. Okay, so I've known people. You're welcome, Letitia. Thanks for asking the question. It was a very necessary question, I think, for everyone too. In order to enforce these boundaries, you need to commit them to writing. You need to write down, here's what happened, here's how I felt, here's how it looked through your eyes, and here's the boundary I'm setting going forward. My boundary is that I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Or my boundary is I'll come to holiday dinners, but I'll always come in my own car, and I will be ready to leave the moment you say something that, instead of merely disagreeing with me, disagrees with who I am as a human being. Do y'all see the difference between that? You can disagree agreeably, but as soon as someone crosses territory into, you know what the problem is with you, like not with what you did, with you. That's the moment when you get in your car and you leave. You pick up your ball and go home. You don't continue that because you don't have to, nor should you tolerate attacks on your personhood. That's not appropriate. It's not okay. Mary D, I'm sorry, but you're saying this is like forgiveness. You only have to put it into words for yourself. Yes, do not tell the other person this. This entire thing, we're still doing, putting it into words. No, part one is here's what happened and how it affected me. Putting it into words, part two is here's how it looked through the perpetrator's eyes. Putting it into words, part three is adding your boundaries. You don't tell the other person any of this. This is for you, it's not for them. This entire lecture today, it's for you, it's not for them. All of this is for your happiness, your healthiness, your needs going forward. It's not for them. It may improve their life too, but that's immaterial. And somebody says, agree, you don't have to engage with the ex. Of course you don't. You do, unless you have children together. And by the way, my book about single parenting, it talks about that. It talks about what if you're divorced from an abuser? What if you're divorced from someone in the court? You've got court orders that you have to engage. Okay, here's a boundary. I will only communicate with you by text and email. It will all be on the record where a judge can see it if necessary. You don't have to tell them that. Somebody says, if it's with siblings and you don't want to be estranged, folks, we don't always get what we want. It's if it's with siblings and you don't want to be estranged, you still have to figure out. I mean, I know that we want healthy relationships and happy relationships with other people, but folks, that doesn't cross your desk. You don't get, this is the hard thing about this. We don't get to decide somebody else is going to be kind and respectful and appropriate with us. I wish we got to decide that. All we get to decide is what's good enough for us and what our boundaries are around that. So if you don't want to be estranged from your brother or your sister, then you have to decide, okay, at what point in a conversation am I going to hang up the phone, stop texting, stop responding to the emails, leave the house? At what point am I going to enforce a boundary? Because if you don't have boundaries, here's what happens. You have fresh opportunities to forgive again and again and again and again, and you're going to get ground down about the same thing again and again and again and again. Forgiveness work is not about being a doormat. It's about clearing your heart and protecting yourself going forward. So as Dow asked, if you have to repeatedly interact, you have to set a boundary and be firm about the unnegotiable line. Yeah, that's absolutely right. You have to know, a lot of this is self-knowledge. Like, I know about myself And I'm very lucky in this. The second someone is unkind or disrespectful to me, I am completely, utterly, and totally done with them. Just done. And I hope all of you can get there because it's not okay. Can I share my email address? Yes, my email address, I'm sharing it at the end of this presentation today. Absolutely. Oh, can I share my email that I sent to the other person? No, I can't show that. That was private. I can tell you the gist of it, which was, you know, there are core incompatibilities here and I don't see a path forward. So we're going to, you know, need to put this on pause and yeah, nothing disrespectful. You can set a boundary without ever saying, you know how mean you are, you know what you did to me, you know what a bad person you are. Oh yeah, look at your own house, get your own house in order. Nope, that's not kind of respectful either. Keep your side of the street scrupulously clean. Okay, can't empathy lead to the understanding that in X situation, a person did something, but it's not something they will do anytime they're in a similar situation? Good luck with that one. I'm going to say no. You're asking for my email. Okay, my email, it is in writing at the end of today's lecture. Set a boundary. Yep. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, at the very last, putting it into words thing is write or speak your summary statement. So-and-so, I am forgiving you. Again, you're not saying this to them. You're saying it to an empty chair. You're saying it to your journal. You're saying it to a letter you won't send. Dear former person of mine, I am forgiving you for, fill in the blank, what for? And there may be many blanks to fill in. I'm forgiving you for abusing drugs and alcohol. I'm forgiving you for putting substances above your family. I'm forgiving you for the times that you accidentally endangered all of our lives. I'm forgiving you for the times that you drove drunk and endangered people on the highway and terrified me. I mean, you know, say explicitly what you're forgiving and then say, I'm letting go of my anger and desire for revenge so that I can have a happy life. Okay, putting it all together. Just because you forgave someone doesn't mean you won't need to forgive them again. You won't, this is a journey, not a destination. This is a quote from someone that let me use her whole story of forgiveness. And she had a lot to forgive. She had an ex who was really abusive and he cheated on her. And she let me put her whole story into my book. I needed to forgive him for cheating on me and for choosing the other woman over me in the end. This was a very tough journey. It did not happen immediately. In the beginning, I didn't think it was ever remotely possible to be where I am today. By the way, she's very happily remarried to someone who is kind and respectful and loyal and treats her like royalty. I do think I've mostly forgiven him. I'm actually not sure forgiveness is really a destination. I think it could be more like grief. It comes and goes in waves. Over time, I have gotten very close to 100% forgiveness. Sometimes I'm not certain 100% forgiveness is truly possible. Other times I think I'm there. I guess I need to forgive him most of all for how his behaviors have and will continue to affect our children. I still have a lot of forgiving to do. I'm trying sometimes. Progress, not perfection. In long-term relationships, you're going to have to forgive hopefully quickly, and you need to give them a chance to discuss with you. If it's like a marriage or something, you need to give them a chance to discuss with you what it is you're having a hard time moving past. The book, again, Broken Trust, is great for that. But ultimately, if they lack the skills, abilities, or desire to make it where you're not going to have to keep forgiving this same transgression, then you're going to have to set up boundaries. Finally, you're going to need to forgive yourself. Most of us, looking back, have things that we wish we had not done. And that's certainly true of me as well. So this same exercise can be turned to an exercise about yourself, where you name how somebody else might be feeling, what you did to them. You then see it through your own eyes, why it is that you did this. You then set boundaries for your own behavior going forward that you're committing to. You then restate everything you're forgiving yourself for, and you make this statement about letting go of anger about this. And if it's you, a lot of times you're also letting go of shame about this. So you do this exercise and you do it for yourself. And it works quite well. And again, you may need to do it over a period of time. Just keep doing the exercise and eventually it really will permeate. Okay, so to contact me, my email is duana@lovesciencemedia.com, and I do answer all emails that I receive for free. If you don't hear from me in a day or so, your email may have gone to my spam folder and I may not have checked it. Please email me again. Please reach out again. I have a website where I post all my podcasts, all my appearances, lovesciencemedia.com. If you want to see my full roster of books to see which topics might fit you the most, there is also free content there at lovefactually.co. And you can find out lots more at Amazon, Goodreads, Psychology Today, Spotify, and more. And I thank you very, very much for your kind attention today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Duana, and thank you all the participants. Duana, I loved your presentation as always, but particularly I think the balance between paying attention to being kind ourselves, kind and compassionate, and also paying attention to setting boundaries and looking for that same kindness in other people we interact with. I found very useful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you at our next session, which will be in the spring semester. Happy holidays.